Hello, Nikkole. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. This is Nikkole Salters, the writer of the play Repairing a Nation.
Yes.
And tell us why you decided to do this play. Why did you want to write it?
I wanted to write a play that allowed us to explore the topic of reparations beyond the kind of polar arguments, right? So I'm for it, I'm against it, or who's going to pay for it, or any of that stuff. I wanted the one to talk about why reparation was even needed, why one would need reparation, what the nature of that is, and how it changes over time across generation. And how we can begin to repair or get to a place of healing that is kind of beyond just, you know, retribution.
So tell us about the incident you're writing about. I know it happened in Oklahoma.
Yes. I decided to use the context of the Tulsa race riot, which happened in 1921 in Tulsa in a community called Greenwood, which was known as Black Wall Street. And it was known as Black Wall Street kind of because it was segregated. That kind of forced segregation actually allowed for a thriving financial community, a thriving economy in their community. So you had, and also because it was segregation didn't allow for classism, you had black people that ran the economic gamut also within this community. So you had people who were PhD holders of, you know, in psychology and sociology and medicine, but you also had people who, you know, were picked up trash. And everybody in between was a part of this community. And they had their own movie theater, they had their own schools, they had their own churches, they had their own hotels, they had their own restaurants, they had their own everything. There was a resentment that had built for that. And the Tulsa at large was really a part of the quote-unquote wild, wild west. So you have to remember Oklahoma was a place that was created by decree of the president saying to the population, hey, we have some land out west. Go grab it. As much as you can grab, you can have.
I know.
So they take off. So you can imagine the lawlessness that occurred as people were trying to take that land over and make it their own. So there was mob rule in this place. And there are incidents far and wide about mobs pulling people, being judge and jury, pulling people and like murdering them, killing them, maiming them for whatever crime that they said that you did. There was no court system, there was no arrest, there was no arraignment, there was none of that.
That's unbelievable.
It was crazy. So if you couple those two things together with an accusation, a man named, gosh, I can't remember his name. His name starts with Roland something. I can think of his surname. He was accused of raping a young woman. And so you have to remember at that time, one of the few things that a woman could do for work was run an elevator. And in order for the black people to use the restroom in the downtown area, they had to go to a very specific bathroom that was on like a top floor of one of the buildings. So you have this young man who gets on an elevator with a young elevator operator. And from there, the story turns into many stories, depending on who you ask. But we definitely know that there was a scream and there was a running away. He ran all the way to Greenwood. Long story short, as the crowd grew around the city hall where he was being held, the men of Greenwood were also trying to protect his due process. And as they were protecting him, they got in confrontation with said mob. I think of one of the stories I like the most is a black man was carrying a weapon. They were all armed, and a white man says to him, "Where, you know, hey, N-word, where do you get that weapon?" And he says, "I got it from the war, and I'll use it if I have to." And he says, "No, you won't." And he goes for it, and they struggle over it, and a shot is fired, and all HE double hockey sticks breaks loose. And then from there, it's interesting because no one goes for the young man that's being held in City Hall. No, they go for the community.
Isn't that something?
It's
an excuse.
They go straight to the community.
And
the sheriff
destroy.
What is he? He bequeaths a lot of the, it's not the right word, the citizenry with their, like a temporary police status.
Okay.
So a lot of the white men are now acting on behalf of the city-state.
Wow, okay.
Right? And they arrest the black people. Sometimes the sheriff is said to have been arresting them for their own protection. Sometimes he's arresting them because he thinks that they are the cause of said riot.
Okay.
But either way, a bunch of black people who weren't killed and maimed by the mob were arrested, while the rest of the mob, acting on behalf sometimes of the police, destroyed the entire community. I think it's 5 or 6 square miles.
Unbelievable.
Literally leveled, literally leveled, to the point where, I mean, these people owned their homes, their own property. When they filed for insurance claims, or when they went to claim the property at City Hall, they would say, you know, I lived at Oak and Vine.
Right.
And the people of the town were like, there's no such thing anymore. That was also their way of commandeering the property.
Oh my, so they took the people's property on top of it.
On top of it. So it's like, but that's how leveled it was.
Yes.
Like you couldn't, like what street?
I read that they actually bombed.
There are accounts of bombing. It's been refuted, and I don't know how it has stood up to those refutes.
Okay.
But there have been many claims that they were actually bombed, that the 2 times America has actually bombed its citizens were in the Tulsa race riots and the MOVE organization in Philadelphia.
I remember that. I remember
bombed its own population twice.
Unbelievable. So as a result of this happening in 1921,
yes,
and the fact that we are the request for reparations came in, how did that come about?
Well, it's also a long story. Congressman John Conyers in Michigan, since the 80s, has been proposing a bill. It's called HR, it's either 54 or 57 before Congress. And this bill is a bill that would create a commission that would explore whether or not or how slavery's impact affects us today and would make recommendations on behalf of society for legislation. He has proposed this bill every term that he's been elected, and every term it has not even made it to committee for discussion. Johnny Cochran and Charles Ogletree were trying to do something similar. And they thought to go along the path of the judiciary, the same way that like the civil rights movement made the strategy through the judicial system. So they said, we're not, through the judicial system, because of the statute of limitations, we're not going to get reparations for slavery. But what we can do is bring up claims where African Americans have lost real-time property and get retribution for said things, and have a series of those cases on the books, So for instance, in Rosewood, the people in Rosewood were able to sue the state of Florida, and they actually received reparations for the property loss. So you have to, because we are a materialistic society, I guess, and property rights are always over human rights.
It is.
If you've lost property, we can help you. If you lost your life, I don't know what to do. If you lost generations of culture, I can't help you. But if you lost a bed, now we know what to do. And so they actually got reparations, and so their goal was to create a chain of these events or these decisions that were made by justices. That doesn't make any sense. So Cochran and Ogletree were going to take that victory in Rosewood in Florida, and they were going to find cases across the nation that had similar property deprivation issues, And they were going to win those cases and use the collection of those cases to create a foundation for the argument for legislation.
Nice. Very nice.
So as they were going across the country, they read up on Tulsa, and then Tulsa was a very interesting place because the governor of Oklahoma had already issued its own commission to study the nature of the Tulsa race riot, whether it existed or not, and then what actually happened to be the state's historic record, the official record. So it's a bipartisan party. And they spent a year studying this event, and they came up with their report. And in their report, they recommended reparations.
Okay, all right.
And the governor said, "That's interesting. We're not really going to do that. That's nice.
Right.
Here's a statue and some scholarships, and we'll call it a day." So Johnnie Cochran used that as the platform upon which he could now sue.
Okay.
So he wanted to start a class action suit. So he had to gather all of the actual people who were there, and these people are now in their 80s and 90s, right? Because they were children, so they weren't even adults when it transpired. Because you as a second generation, you can't say my mom was a part of that and she lost something. Like once she's gone, that's it.
Wow. Okay.
So as they started to build the case and started to garner the support and started to gather all of the claimants, people did begin to die as time went on, and then Johnnie Cochran died, and then so it all kind of lost its steam.
Johnnie Cochran
and but not just that particular thing, but the whole kind of movement, because he was a part of a larger movement, a larger cause, and that all lost steam.
Okay.
So in my play...
Yes. Let's go back to the play. Okay.
In my play, we meet a family who has the right to make a claim.
Okay.
And one of the family members really wants to make that claim. I fudged a little bit of the actual details. I say that the descendants are able to make a claim as well.
Okay.
So the woman, the protagonist, her name is Lois. Her father died in July, and we're in the holiday season.
Okay.
So to honor his life, she felt like this would be something that he would have wanted and should have deserved. So she's going to get it for her and her father and her son and for the family.
Okay.
But unfortunately, she has to get the family on board. She has to get the oldest surviving member to sign the affidavit so that they can be a part of the claim.
All right.
And that is her cousin Chuck.
Okay.
Who has no intention of being a part of any such thing.
Why? Why would Chuck?
He feels like he doesn't need any handouts. He thinks it's reprehensible. And he also thinks that it's a little disgusting to put a price tag on the loss of your family. But we come to find in the play that there's also another more practical reason why he doesn't want that to occur.
Okay, so we're going to keep that secret.
You're going to keep that secret.
So you have to go see the play.
Go see the play, yes. But it's very, it runs parallel to the macro story of these people trying to find a place that acknowledges the pain and injury that happened.
Right.
You know, because in Tulsa there was a period of time. I mean, there was even like a professor who would teach the Tulsa Race Riot in her history class, and she had her students file a claim against her for lying to them.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
For lying to them.
Well, it's on record now.
It's on record. So part of that, part of all of this healing is first you got to acknowledge that it happened and how it happened. Right. Like that it happened, but how it happened.
Exactly.
And we have to be honest with that. And then once we do that, now what can we do?
Right. Well, they got a statue and some scholarships. No money, but
Yeah.
And a public acknowledgement.
But it really, just come see the play. Because it's really about the complexity of that, what happens when the injury wasn't you, it was your father or your grandfather. Okay. Where do you stand in that? What's your responsibility in that? You have inherited something. How do you function in that? Do you abandon it completely? Right. Or you did work to maintain it? Does that not count for anything?
All very good questions that can be answered in the play.
In the play!
Okay. Which is going to be at the Crossroads Theatre, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Give us the dates again, please.
We run from February 26th to March 8th, so it's a limited engagement. Okay. You can get tickets online at crossroadstheatrecompany.org.
Wonderful.
You can check me out at NikkoleSalter.com.
Wonderful. Your Twitter account also?
At Nikkole Salter. I'm very simple. Everything is just my name. I don't have any fancy handles or anything like that. It's just Nikkole Salter. Okay. And my name is spelled with 2 Ks.
2 Ks. Spell your name for
Nikkole.
Okay. wonderful.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a chance to go see this wonderful play.
Please do.
At the Crossroads Theatre. It sounds very exciting. It's filled with scandal and intrigue and history and a great opportunity to learn about our past and how it affects our current situation.
And our future.
And our future.
And our future.
Thank you so much, Nikkole Salters.
Thank
It's
you.
been wonderful. This is the edition for the Gifts to Freedom. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.